What's up, everybody? If you're anything like me, you've been playing the hell out of Street Fighter 6 ever since it launched. And honestly, for me, I think it's gonna be one of my favorite games of all time at the rate it's going. But I also wanted to introduce you all to one of my other favorite games of all time, which is Super Smash Bros. Melee. I think if you like the freedom of expression that the drive system allows you in Street Fighter 6, you're gonna like Melee's freedom of expression because it's built right into the physics engine. So before we get into it, I have to plug Slippi and the creator Fizzy, because this is the best way to play Melee Online by far. Fizzy put rollback netcode into Slippi, and it feels pretty much as good as online in SF6. In addition to Slippi, you're also going to want to get the Unclepunch training pack. This is a highly customizable training mode with things like preset scenarios and different activities and stuff you can do. It's really useful. In the description, you'll find links to videos that can teach you how to download Slippi and Unclepunch. Okay, before anything else, I want to talk about character recommendations a little bit. You know, with fighting games, it can be really easy to say pick whoever you want, and while that is technically true, it's kind of a cop-out answer, I think. You know, Melee's a game where about half the cast isn't even considered tournament viable, so if you want to play competitively, you know, that's a consideration. You're gonna have to do your research. The good news for you is I have 3 recommendations, and all 3 of them I consider to be top tiers. One is offensively oriented, one is defensive, and one's kind of in the middle. Also, none of these are spaceys, so Fox or Falco. The reason for that, a lot of the time Fox and Falco can win scenarios for free in ways that these other characters just can't replicate. So you can get by with them without having to really learn the fundamentals of a game. But these characters I'm recommending to you require you to have mastery over fundamentals, which sounds like a bad thing, but it's actually good because their tools are really strong once you learn how to use them properly. And for the big reveal, drumroll please. Captain Falcon, Sheik, and Marth. These are all really strong characters, but what's really useful about them is they're going to teach you how to understand the game better than Fox and Falco do. I'm going to have more information on these characters later, so you can skip ahead to the timestamps if you want, but I recommend learning about the overall game mechanics first, so you better understand their game plans. So how do you even win the game? Obviously there's percent instead of life bars, so when you get hit your percent goes up, you get sent flying. The more your percent goes up, the further you fly, and when you fly far enough, you'll hit a blast zone, and that will cause you to lose one of your 4 stocks. The ultimate goal of the game is to remove all 4 of your opponent's stocks before they can do the same thing to you. 2 universal mechanics to be aware of that are different than in Street Fighter. First of all, you're not forced to face your opponent like you are in Street Fighter. You can have your back to them anytime you want. This can be really useful for characters who have big hitboxes on the backside of them. You can turn around to use them facing forward. If you ever get hit with an attack that looks like it hits on the opposite side, your knockback can get reversed. This is called a reverse hit. Also, you can walk through your opponent's character. If you're in the corner or anything, you can always just like dash through them to get center stage. Unlike in Street Fighter, the stages in Melee are not just cosmetic. There are 6 tournament legal stages and most of them have platforms, which I'll get into platforms more later. The first stage I want to talk about is Yoshi's Story. This is the smallest out of all the stages. It's got the closest blast zones, it's the shortest stage overall, it's got 3 platforms, that's fairly standard, and there is some janky stuff. There's Randall.
Ooh. Oh my god! I don't think that was random timing, I just think that was just luck. Oh, the tag! Look, okay!
And there's Shy Guys.
Oh, just barely mispaces it.
Yo, that's
catches him.
smart. Getting hurt.
Oh my god! Oh.
Off the Shy Guy. Let's go, Stango!
You can also wall jump off of the sides of the stage. Fountain of Dreams also has pretty close horizontal blast zones, but the vertical blast zones are a little more moderate. It's also a pretty short stage horizontally, and it's also a tri-plat stage. The most unique thing about Fountain, though, is that the platforms will randomly move up and down. Pokemon Stadium is a long stage horizontally. You have long blast zones left and right, but a fairly low upper blast zone. Also, it's the only stage with 2 platforms instead of 3, so there's no top platform. Battlefield is probably the most average stage. It's got pretty medium blast zones, both horizontally and vertically, and it's got a tri-plat setup. The most noteworthy thing about Battlefield is that it's got pretty janky ledges.
Yeah. Really strong edge guard so far. How did he do that?
That was the Hex Money Pistol.
Final Destination also has pretty average blast zones, pretty comparable to Battlefield. But the big difference with Final Destination is that there are no platforms whatsoever.
Following it home, that's what you want to watch. You're getting inside that fox's head. That's what he's thinking. Where is the grab coming from? So now we're at over 70%. That's how it can happen.
Oh! From coast to
triple.
coast.
Dreamland is by far the biggest of all the stages, so it's got the biggest blast zones, and it's also got the highest tri-platform layout. The other main thing Dreamland has is Wispy.
Oh well, it was outside of Let's Jump Forward Air range, and it was
Wispy.
Wispy is on NorCal side.
Let's go. That NorCal wins.
The NorCal wins.
With there being multiple stages, and with them having different platform layouts, it can be really daunting to try to understand the flow of combat. To alleviate this a little bit, I have created 4 different tiers of stage control that I'd like to go over. So for the purposes of this example, I divided up stage control into 4 distinct tiers, or 4 different zones. Zone 1 is maintaining center stage. You can kind of think of this as like a big bubble. When you have center stage, you have the most real estate, and you're the furthest away from the blast zones. This is what you want to maintain control of. From this position, you're able to start safely pressuring your opponent off stage. Tier 2 is going to be platforms. So platforms are useful as an escape tool when you're in the corner, and we'll get to the corner more in just a moment. But the problem with platforms is it's generally harder to challenge center stage, and you are closer to the blast zones. But this is still safer than the corner. Tier 3 is going to be the corner. Kind of like in Street Fighter, when you're put in the corner in Melee, you're pretty limited defensively. You basically get out by either A, going through your opponent on the ground, or B, jumping over them and using platforms. Tier 4 is going to be the ledge, and this is like your last resort basically. If you're pushed to the ledge, you really don't have a lot to work with. But you do have some to work with. You get 30 frames of invulnerability. When you're getting up from the ledge, you have some mix-ups. You can regular get up, you can get up with an attack, you can get up with a roll, you can get up with a jump, or you can refresh your ledge invulnerability. This can be useful for buying yourself some time to think about how you want to get back to stage. For a lot of characters, the most optimal thing to do to get off ledge is to ledge dash. Let's talk a little bit about character weight and fall speed. These are 2 distinct variables, but they're related. Weight and fall speed are going to be different for each individual character. Basically, your character's weight affects how much knockback and hitstun you take for moves. I think fall speed is fairly self-explanatory. That's just how quickly your character can fall to the ground. So when it comes to character weight and fall speed, there's 3 general categories we can make: fast fallers, midweights, and floaties. Your fast faller characters are going to include Fox, Falco, and Captain Falcon. Midweights include characters like Sheik and Marth, and then floaty characters might include Peach and Jigglypuff. One of the bigger differences between Melee and Street Fighter 6 is aerial drift and fast fall. For the most part in Street Fighter 6, the trajectory of your jump is predetermined. But in Melee, you can drift left and right, kind of like you can in platformers. This is really useful for adjusting your spacing mid-jump to make yourself safe. And because of both platforms and air drift, combat in general tends to be a lot more airborne than in SF6, and because of that, anti-airing isn't really like a crucial thing you need to learn, though it's definitely still a thing.
One hit, it's turned into death. Can Levin make it back at neutral at all?
That's gotta be it.
And you can fast fall by pressing down. Because you can drift to space your aerials, and that's your most common way of engaging each other in Melee, learning frame data in the same way that you would learn frame data in a fighting game like Street Fighter 6, it's a lot more nuanced, and it's honestly not even worth learning until you're at a higher level. Knockback and Hitstun refers to how far you're sent flying and how long you're unable to act. Your knockback gets affected by DI, and I want to make a quick point here because DI is an abbreviation that both SF6 and Melee use, but it means totally different things. In SF6, DI means drive impact, but in Melee, DI stands for directional influence, which is a way of changing the angle you're sent flying at. And so because of mechanics like DI, air drift, and double jumps, the combo system can feel really dynamic and fluid. Here's a quick montage to show you what I mean. Shielding is this game's version of blocking, and it's generally a strong defensive tool because a lot of attacks in this game are just flat out unsafe on shield. I would say Spacey's Shine Pressure is the closest thing we have to a true block string in Melee. If you drop shield normally, that has recovery frames, so you're not instantly actionable like you would be after blocking in Street Fighter. Instead, when you find yourself shielding, use universal out of shield options, things like rolling, spot dodging, jumping. You can shield grab, you can do an aerial, you can wave dash, up smash, up B, or shield drop if you're on a platform. Your shield does shrink over time, and this shrinking happens faster the more hits you take. If your shield gets small enough, you can get shield poked. This is kind of like high and low blocking, but it's more ambiguous. If you aren't careful with your shield and it gets too small, it'll pop and you get stunned. This, I would say, is similar to getting hit by drive impact in the corner during burnout. You can also light shield instead of regular shield by half pressing L or R. This has a better shot of fully covering your character and preventing shield pokes, but you do experience more pushback from attacks. You can also grab directly out of shield. This is referred to as a shield grab. The normal way you would grab is by pressing Z, but Z is actually just a shortcut for R plus A. So to shield grab, you can just hold shield and press A. Power shielding is a mechanic similar to perfect parrying, but there's no cinematic that gives you time to react. This is still worth learning though, because it lets you punish attacks on shield, and it actually reflects projectiles.
Back to back.
Oh!
You can't stop him! You can't stop him! He did 9%, but it was so good.
Grabs and throws also work quite a bit differently in Melee than in Street Fighter. Throw teching flat out does not exist in this game, so the only ways to beat grabs are to hit the startup or end lag, or to just avoid it altogether.
Knockdown, though. Jeez.
Oh,
is he
wow.
waiting for the spot?
Oh,
dodge?
oh God, he's dead.
When you land a grab, you can pummel your opponent. You get roughly 1 guaranteed pummel per 50% of damage on them, but if you try to do more than that, they can try to mash out. So there's actually 2 different types of grabs. There's run grab and there's stand grab. And stand grab is almost always better. So if you want to stand grab out of a run, you have to do a jump canceled grab. So jump and then grab immediately after, before you are actually airborne. When doing this, if you go airborne, then you didn't grab fast enough after your jump. It should feel almost like you're pressing them at the exact same time. Some characters have chain grabs. This basically refers to repeatedly using the same throw over and over again to punish your opponent. In terms of special moves, you don't need to use any motion inputs for your specials. It's all done with the B button. Every character gets 4 specials by default: a neutral special, a side or forward special, an up special, and a down special. In general, you want to treat your up special as like a third jump, but keep in mind that after your up B, you are in a helpless state while you're falling. When it comes to the neutral game of Melee, your goal should be to maintain that tier 1 of stage control that we talked about earlier. You want to keep yourself safe and look for openings in your opponent's movements to start pushing them towards the corner. Footsies mostly consists of wave dashing and dash dancing and maintaining space with pokes while vying for stage control. Platforms can be used defensively, but you do have to be careful about how you get back down. Although you don't have any meters to worry about, you will have to pay attention to both the percent of you and your opponent. As your percent rises, some moves become more useful in neutral, and some become less. A lot of characters can set up with punishes by either wave dashing or dash dancing back. In general, dash dance grab is huge, because grab is usually your best combo starter. One concept that's crucial to understand for your punish game is the most basic DI mix-up, which is survival DI or combo DI. If they go for survival DI, they're trying to DI in to survive a kill move, so to punish this, you can keep juggling them. If they instead DI away to try to get out of a combo, you want to use a high knockback move to go for a kill. A big component of the punish game in Melee is something called tech chasing. You can think of this as this game's equivalent to Oki, but also not really. In SF6, Oki gives you a mix-up in your favor when you land a knockdown. but in Melee, when you get a knockdown, your opponent gets to tech, which is a kind of like a quick rise get up. So you can either tech left, right, in place, or miss the tech. However, because of no throw teching, and because each tech option has vulnerable frames at the end, reaction tech chasing is possible. And if it's done properly, it's basically still part of your punish game. There's no escaping it outside of mixing up your tech patterns and hoping for the best. Keep in mind your opponent can still DI whichever throw you use, so that allows them to change the starting position of their tech. Chain grabs are another big part of the punish game, although these are more character specific, and generally speaking they're most practical on FD. Still, if your character has chain grabs, do yourself a favor and learn all the follow-ups. Sometimes when you knock your opponent off stage, they won't automatically hit the blast zone and they can try to get back to stage. So to counter that, you have to edgeguard them. You can edgeguard from on stage, you can edgeguard holding the ledge, or you can edgeguard jumping off stage. In general, you want to look for high recoveries first, because their recovery gets much more limited once they're below ledge. If you're holding ledge, you could refresh your own ledge invulnerability to occupy it and force them to up B on stage, and then punish that. Also, be on the lookout for more character-specific recovery resources. You can usually scout these out and punish them.
Good solve, but H-Buck's ready for it.
H-Buck's a master.
Melee has kind of like a secret comeback mechanic in that every time you respawn, you get a couple seconds of invulnerability. The respawning character usually will try to go for a mix-up and read their opponent's movement to get a big opening. As the defender, you can try to wave dash and dash dance around to avoid their invincibility. You could also jump to a platform and light shield. That tends to work fairly well. If you can get a feel for the invincibility timing, you can start punishing your opponent for overextending.
So, you know, to me, what a mark of a good player is how they handle invincibility.
In this section, I'm going to briefly go over a number of advanced techniques that are important to Melee. Some are definitely more important than others, so don't feel overwhelmed. You don't have to learn this all at once. For the recommended characters, Sheik, Falcon, and Marth, I decided to show you an example game of each with notes around the borders. Thank you all very much for watching. This video ended up taking way more time to edit than I thought it would, so if you found it useful or enjoyable, please consider subscribing. I'll see y'all later. Take care. Sheik.
Captain Falcon.